Costco sold $269.9 billion of merchandise last year, and it kept about 1.9 cents of profit per dollar. That is not a failure. That is a decision. A margin that thin is normally something a company apologizes for in public, and this one built its entire business to produce one. Every rule inside that building exists to protect it. Start with the strangest rule of all. The company refuses to sell you most of the things you might reasonably want to buy. It says so itself. The annual report describes a business built on offering a deliberately limited selection of goods. A building the size of a city block, carrying fewer than 4,000 different products. And that number is a choice, not a constraint. So the real question is not how the prices got so low. It is what this company is actually selling when it earns nothing on the goods. Millions of people pay for the answer every year. Almost none of them could tell you what it is. Look closely at that limit, and it gets stranger. Because nothing about the warehouse format actually requires it. BJ's Wholesale Club runs the same kind of building and advertises more than 7,000 products as its competitive advantage. Costco carries roughly half that number, and it treats the shortage not as a compromise, but as the entire point. The company does not simply stock less than its rivals. It prunes. Where a supermarket offers you a dozen versions of the same thing, Costco picks a single winner and removes every other one from the shelf. Many products come only in a case or a multi-pack, so even the size of the decision is made for you. It closes earlier than most of its competitors, too. None of that is a side effect. The narrow shelf is the machine that manufactures the price. Which leaves one obvious question. Why would a shop that wants your money refuse to sell you things? The answer showed up in November 2009, when Costco quietly stopped reordering Coca-Cola and let the shelves run down. There was no boycott. Then the company explained itself to the members in writing, which turned a supply dispute into a demonstration. The notice read, "Coca-Cola has not provided Costco with competitive pricing so that we may pass along the value our members deserve." The standoff ran about 3 weeks. Coca-Cola settled that December. That threat works because of what a small shelf does to demand. When a category holds one winner instead of a dozen, all the divided spending lands on one contract. And behind that one slot sit 81 million paid members, an order larger than any rival can offer, and too large to walk away from. So the supplier moves its price rather than lose the category, which is a decision no other retailer can force. And because Costco takes its profit somewhere else entirely, it has no reason to keep that concession for itself. The lower cost goes straight onto the shelf label, and the arrangement only holds while the shelf stays small. The permanent version of that threat has a name, and it is probably in your kitchen. Kirkland Signature, Costco's own label, sells more than $86 billion a year. Most store brands hide at the bottom of the shelf and compete on being visibly cheaper. Costco does the opposite. It puts the Kirkland version directly beside the national brand it undercuts, priced below it, and earning Costco more than the brand does. So the brand standing next to it faces a simple choice: match the price or give up the slot to the label beside it. And because there are only a few thousand slots in the building, losing one means losing the category, not just a shelf. The company says it intends to push that own label further still. There is one more line in that filing. And it is stranger than any of this. Costco says it often sells its inventory before it is required to pay for it, which raises a question about the pallets stacked to the ceiling in every direction. If Costco has not paid for any of it yet, who has? The suppliers have. Costco's stock moves about 13 times a year, which means the average item sits on that floor for roughly 4 weeks. Supplier invoices come due at around 30 days, so the goods have already turned back into cash before the bill for them arrives. 2 days does not sound like much. Multiply it across every category, every week, and it stops being a detail. On the last day of its financial year, Costco owed suppliers nearly $20 billion. That is more than everything sitting inside its buildings. Not roughly equal to it, more than it. The entire inventory is financed by the people who supplied it, and that changes what growth costs. Because expansion ties up almost none of Costco's own money, it can afford to earn nothing on the goods. An earlier filing says exactly this: the faster the stock turns, the more of it the suppliers are financing rather than Costco. The people stacking those pallets are lending Costco the goods on them, and the loan is repaid out of what you spend. Now look at the room itself. Because the room is making the argument. Goods sit on the pallets they arrived on, stacked on racking above the aisles, and no attempt has been made to make it pleasant. Nothing is decorated. Costco writes in its own annual report that its warehouses are not elaborate. A rare corporate sentence that means exactly what it says. Every absence is a cost that never reaches the price you pay. Pallets instead of shelving means less labor. Nobody unpacks anything before you buy it. One controlled entrance means less theft, so losses stay well below what an ordinary shop absorbs. Accepting one card network and refusing the rest drives the payment fee to a fraction of what most shops pay. And the advertising is the biggest absence of all. An older filing described the entire marketing effort as coupon mailers, a member magazine, and emails to existing members. The current filing has no marketing section at all of which leaves one obvious place left to cut. So why does the cheapest operator in retail refuse to touch the biggest cost it has left? Payroll is where a retailer usually finds its savings. It is the one line a chief executive can always cut. Costco employs hundreds of thousands of people and says plainly that minimizing their pay is not the policy. The average hourly worker in the United States now earns about $32 an hour, which is not what the lowest cost operator should look like. Retention past the first year runs far higher than the rest of retail manages. That is not generosity, it is arithmetic. Turnover is the one cost this model cannot absorb. Retraining is expensive and no margin is left to absorb it. A worker who stays gets faster. A faster worker moves more goods per hour of wage. So it shows up in the accounts as productivity, not generosity. And the result is the number that explains the whole price. Costco spends $9.25 of every sales dollar running its operation. Walmart spends more than twice that much. That gap is what pays for the low prices and the wages at the same time. Which brings us back to the door, and to what happens there before you have seen a single price you have already paid. The card costs $65 a year in the United States, and the upgraded tier costs twice that again. That money arrives before the shopping year begins and sits on the balance sheet as fees not yet earned. Unlike everything on the shelves, it carries no cost of goods, so it reaches the profit line almost whole. For 7 years, Costco left that price alone, and then, for the first time in a long while, it went up. Members had every reason to walk. So the fee is not a toll you pay to reach the discount. The discount is what makes the fee worth paying, which means the fee is the product, and the warehouse is the argument. And this is where all of it starts to get expensive. Because keeping a promise like that costs real money, and Costco has kept one of them for 40 years. Costco started selling a hot dog and a soda together in 1985, and the pair costs the same today. It never moved. At some point, the arithmetic stopped working, and Craig Jelinek, who would later run the company, told the founder they were losing money. Jim Sinegal's reply, "If you raise the effing hot dog, I will kill you." Then he added, "Figure it out." He was not joking. So they figured it out, and Costco built its own hot dog plant rather than move the price. The same story played out with the roast chicken. Competitors repriced. Costco held still. Its finance chief said the company would give up tens of millions a year in margin to leave it alone. Then, it built a poultry complex in Fremont, Nebraska, so it could attack the cost of the bird instead of its price. None of this is sentiment. These are the only two prices a member can check from memory. Because they never move, they become instruments. So when the receipt for everything else cannot be verified, the hot dog testifies on its behalf. Hundreds of millions of those combos go out the door every year. Which brings us to the number this whole thing has been walking toward. Last year, Costco collected $5.3 billion in membership fees. After paying to run those warehouses, the merchandise operation was left with less. Read that again, because it inverts the business. Selling $250 billion of goods produced a smaller profit than charging people for permission to walk in. The fee costs the company almost nothing to supply, which is why membership came to more than half of everything Costco earned before tax. So the warehouse is not the profit center. It is the cost of keeping the subscription. And that makes this a different kind of company entirely. Everything inside it, the missing brands, the bare racking, the frozen hot dog, was never thrift. It is evidence produced at industrial scale for a claim that almost no member will ever check. And once the machine looks like that, the strangest rule of all finally makes sense. How does a shop with nothing to discount ever get anybody to hurry? Costco's answer is to make the merchandise itself perishable. The assortment rotates constantly. The thing you saw last month may simply be gone. And the company says so itself. It tells members to buy the things that interest them sooner rather than later, because the thing may not be there next time. That sentence is doing an enormous amount of work. A discount makes today cheaper than tomorrow, which is why every other retailer runs one. Costco cannot offer that without admitting its ordinary price was never the lowest. So it manufactures the urgency instead of buying it. Nothing is announced. The deadline is printed on the price tag. An ending of 0.97 means that warehouse cut the price. An asterisk in the corner means the item is not coming back. The clearance and the countdown both live on a shelf label, so neither costs a penny of advertising. There is one real exception, worth naming rather than hiding. A savings book arrives most months carrying instant discounts, but the suppliers largely fund those. not Costco. It is worth arguing with all of this. The strongest objection: the comparison is an accounting choice because warehouse costs serve members and merchandise at once. That is a fair hit. What survives is the shape of the two lines. The fee carries no cost of goods. The merchandise carries all of it. The second objection is about the margin itself. Fuel is roughly a tenth of Costco's sales and earns almost nothing, which drags the average down before any restraint is involved. So the thin margin is partly business mix rather than virtue. A third objection says the narrow shelf is just what the format forces. But BJ's runs the same format and advertises nearly twice the assortment. And the coupon book is real, so never has sales was always too neat. The objection that should bother you most is different. In 2024, Costco announced an advertising network built on what its members buy. The company that once marketed itself with a magazine and a mailer now sells access to its own shoppers. That is new. And renewal is overdetermined. People also renew when the shop is close and the fee is spent. Which is why the answer to that last objection is not a promise. It is an incentive. Once the fee is the profit, a bigger markup stops being a gain because it spends the asset underneath it. Costco states its own position in the filing, which beats any outsider's theory. It does not focus on maximizing the prices it charges, but on keeping a perception among its members of its pricing authority. Its pricing investments include holding prices flat through cost increases, which it admits hurts its own gross margin. Reported policy caps the markup at about 14% on branded goods, a shade higher on its own label. Treat it as reported rather than audited. The sign about Coca-Cola makes more sense in that light. A buyer here is rewarded for pushing a price down because the price is what renews the fee, and the market tested it. After the increase, renewal in the United States and Canada finished the year at 92.3%. Almost nobody left. Raising a price without losing the customer is the definition of pricing power. There is one last piece of this, and it is about you rather than about them. Costco keeps almost nothing on each dollar you hand over. So the model needs a great many dollars. The upgraded membership pays for itself past $3,250 a year, which is less than the average member already spends. So the tier is priced just under where its buyers were always going to stand. Fewer than half of Costco's members hold that upgrade, and they generate about 3/4 of sales. The machine does not need to persuade you to spend more. It only needs to know what you were going to spend anyway. You are the model it is priced against. Which leaves one question worth carrying out of the building with you. If the profit is a belief, what would it actually take to break it? A shop that sold everything could not do any of this. It could not concentrate its buying onto a few thousand contracts, so it could not force the price down, and it would have nothing left to charge admission for. Costco does not want you to buy everything, because selling everything would turn it into an ordinary shop. The thin margin is not what this company survives despite. It is what it charges for. That is the trade. Last year, the fee at the door earned more than the entire retail operation inside it, and more than 9 in 10 members renewed anyway, which is what pricing power looks like. So what Costco sells is the belief that you never need to check. The fee is that belief's price. The warehouse is the receipt. A bad quarter on the shelf would not break this, but a member who starts checking would. Which is why the advertising business is worth watching. Nobody knows yet whether restraint was a principle or a phase. Every subscription since runs some version of it. Give something away at cost, then charge you to believe it. The question is always the same. What are they giving up, and what are they charging you to trust? Costco's profit comes from your belief that it is not trying to profit from you. If that concrete floor now reads as design rather than thrift, that is what this channel does. Subscribe, and I will take the next one apart.